Kevin, you can start. We're gonna watch a video first, as always. Later, I'm gonna introduce the topic, the structure, and we'll get started.
This is France. It has the highest population of Muslims in Western Europe. Not far behind is Germany, and then the United Kingdom. But protests in Germany represent a growing number of Western Europeans who want to limit Muslim immigration into the region. These sentiments are only exacerbated by domestic attacks levied in the name of Islam. In 2008, 46% of people in Spain held unfavorable feelings toward Muslims, a modest number compared to the 53% in Greece and 63% in Italy. Despite those statistics, Islam is the fastest growing religion in Europe. How that happened rests in the hands of history. In 1830, the French monarchy invaded Algeria, a largely Muslim country. France dismantled all the Islamic institutions and schools and forced citizens to renounce their religious ideals in exchange for French citizenship. But a century later, a rise in Algerian nationalism and resentment led to a brutal 8-year conflict for independence, which Algeria won. And despite years of friction between native French citizens and French Algerians still constitute by far most of the Muslims in France. Germany, on the other hand, didn't see a boom in its Muslim population until the mid-20th century. After the end of World War II, Germany called for foreign workers to fill the void made more acute by the construction of the Berlin Wall, which cut off laborers in eastern Germany. The new Gastarbeiter program resulted in the immigration of millions of low-skilled Turkish and mostly Muslim laborers who were supposed to stay for 1 or 2 years before returning home. But there were no jobs back home, so they settled in Germany. The need for a bigger labor force and burgeoning trade agreements in the 1960s and 70s saw the increase of Arab and Muslim immigrants into the Netherlands, Sweden, Belgium, and other European countries. And today, a growing number of people in those particular countries fear what they've dubbed the Islamization of the West. In the midst of that fear, Muslims have felt the repercussions. In Sweden, Britain, and France, mosques have been firebombed and burned down. Algerian, Turkish, and Moroccan citizens suffer unemployment rates double and triple the amount of their French and German counterparts. And a recent Amnesty International report found that more and more European Muslims face daily discrimination, forcing them to carve out their own communities outside of mainstream society. This is the environment that has bred the rising tensions between European nationalists and everyday Muslims. And it's why, in part, extremist views on both sides have turned Western Europe into a virtual powder keg.
Okay, thanks, Kevin, for the video. Okay, so essentially, yeah, the topic today is Islamist radicalism in Europe. As you may well know, the structure is basically if you want to speak, you just raise your hand and you get the chance to speak, and others get the chance to answer and debate on what you just said, essentially. So the structure is divided into 5 different stages: the root causes of Islamist radicalism, the counterterrorism measures employed by European governments, societal integration, marginalization, the impact of online propaganda, and the balance between employed security measures and the protection of people's human rights. So we're going to start with the first one, which is the root causes. And just to get some ideas flowing, uh, the floor is now open to just get some ideas on the root causes behind Islam's radicalism in Europe, particularly. So,
I'll start if there is no one else to say anything. I'm not very well informed on this topic, so if I do like misunderstand anything, please correct me. Like I want to put that out there before I start. But the way that I see it is that I think it's getting like very radical and kind of to a point where it's kind of out of hand even because there's so much hatred towards it that like the video said they're forced to kind of carve out their own communities within like outside of kind of what's mainstream happening. And so because they're so separated and yet you're still kind of forced to share one country, one one space with people who you don't like and they don't like you, and like this whole like idea of hatred just kind of like spikes why it's so radical and so extreme. So that's how I see it.
Anyone wants to answer to that?
Well, if I may, I can't say I necessarily agree with you due to the fact that we have many countries in the Middle East themselves, which even after they've been colonies and they've been freed now, they're still radicalizing themselves more and more. I think it's more important to recognize that the people which are becoming more radical are more often than not very uneducated groups of people which are easily influenced and can be forced to recreate an agenda which goes against them. I think even the most radical of people, the most victimized, can realize that killing and pillaging in a country will not support their cause of being integrated into the society because they're further demonizing their own religion.
What is your
Um,
opinion on? Oh,
sorry.
yeah.
I just
Just
wanted to, sorry.
I just wanted to give some food for thought. What do you think about the attacks that have happened that have been, actually, they've happened and they've been done by people who are educated, well educated, and who did not feel the need to, you know, be in a better social class because they were already, well, highly educated and had good jobs. They also, committed such acts of vandalism in support of Islam. Such a case was in America, not in Europe. Um, but in such cases, what is your opinion?
Could
What
you
is the
please
cause?
um, could you please refer to one of the cases in which you're thinking of? Because personally, I cannot recall one of of an educated person. I mean, if we're speaking about terrorism in general, I'd understand that in the U.S., the Unabomber was a very educated person, but in that case, it's also mental illness is a factor to take into consideration.
Yeah, you can now continue.
Yep, I wanted to say that I agree with the idea of how like these acts of terrorism and like vandalism, they are very much kind of demonizing like the religion and the idea that people have, because people who are of different religions, they're not going to refer to the Quran or to kind of the actual beliefs of the religion. They're going to look at Muslims and essentially kind of base their opinion off of that. And so the media that we hear and what is happening in general is kind of why this whole hatred towards it, or like the segregation exists, essentially because like we have a bad idea of these people because of what we hear.
Maybe I think you wanted to talk earlier on. Are you sure? Okay, Kevin, any input?
Wait, can I make a reference to my friend Eric over? I think you already heard. But Eric was a student in Germany, and as what he claims, the school there are full of Muslim, and they're claiming that the Muslim are not really co-oping with the school, that they are just trying to put their days off there, and there's many fights, and they're like smoking there. So perhaps like that's like the norm, but I'm not saying every Muslim are like this. I'm just saying, as according to Eric, that the picture of Islam immigrants are portrayed like that.
Okay, now to what extent do all of you think that that is due to the religion in itself, and to what extent is it because of the socioeconomic struggles that Muslim immigrants are subjected to when they come to Europe? And also, we can also delve into the topic of marginalization and, um, yeah, their marginalization from the European society by Europeans and the rise of the extreme right in politics. So, to what extent is it the religion itself, and to what extent is it the economic struggles that they're subjected to?
I
Well,
think it's
oh,
definitely, go ahead.
no, no, go ahead, go ahead. It's fine.
I think it's definitely a combination of both. And also I'd add in kind of their general culture and like belief that like they are separate from everyone else as well, because what you kind of see happening is they're coming to Europe, they're coming to like France, Germany, these countries, and yet they're not learning the language in a lot of cases, or they're not like adapting to society the way that you would think that someone who moves into a country as an immigrant will, and understand that it's not that simple to just kind of leave your past life behind, but you sort of have a responsibility in front of the country if you're going to become one of their citizens to adopt some of their culture. And yeah, what tends to happen is, obviously I'm very much generalizing it, but in a lot of cases these immigrants don't do that or refuse to do that, and they still kind of very much hold to their beliefs in their community, and they don't like accept the community of Europe. And so, or I'm saying Europe, but whatever the country is. And so the same thing happens back because these people are so different, because they're not making enough of an effort to kind of become part of the society, then the society rejects them as well.
Anyone wants to reply to that?
If I can go. I also agree with what Vika said, but I also want to add on, I think it's also um like obviously that is correct in the sense that if, as she said, it's like a call and response. If one doesn't do it, the other one doesn't respond. um Again, simplifying what Vika said. But I also wanted to add on, I think that there's a huge like the stigma, and there's a huge, like at least in Europe, depending on the country again, um there's like a stigma behind, and that's what also I think leads to the marginalization that was in the original question.
Kevin, do you want to add anything?
No, but I pretty much agree with what Viveka said.
Albert, what's your opinion?
I'll ask that as well.
Um, yeah. Okay, I believe that usually it may not be as a result of the religion itself. I believe it's mainly because of the socioeconomic struggles that Muslims are subjected to when they come to Europe, um, which and the improper management of their integration, I believe, by the most part, from European governments. Because, for example, in France, they completely rejected this multiculturalism model. So they kind of like have this model of secularism where all immigrants are subjected to the French kind of like ideology 100%. And it's really segregated where like all Muslims are sent to live in these suburbs together. And that really prevents them from, really integrating into French society. So I believe it is the failed integration attempts by European countries that really cause this kind of radicalism in the end, because it is segregation in the end. If you don't understand the other side, that's what really causes you to react. So I think it's the European governments that should do something with regard to integration. That's my personal opinion. However, it is also true that um, it is the majority of Islamic countries that have authoritarian regimes. Is that a coincidence? Uh, I, I'm not the one to tell. What are your opinions on that?
I'd completely disagree with you, speaking of that. And for the sake of this debate, I have some fragments of the Quran itself because I'd like to point out the fact that well, we're going to ignore the Old Testament for the sake of convenience because no one even reads the Old Testament anymore. We're all New Testament gang now. And the Torah doesn't have anything of violence because the Ten Commandments state, don't kill thy neighbor. But in Islam, the acts of violence are specifically supported by the religion. And let me just read a couple of the phrases. Where is mine? Okay. Okay, fine. Whoever deviates from the book is to be brought back with iron, i.e., by force. This is from Al Hadid 5725. There's like tens of hundreds of more about many other cases, and violence is a very prevalent thing when it comes to Islam, and it's not just radicalism, but if one truly wants to follow the book, there are many rules which go against basic morality, like stating that if your wife defies you twice, you're allowed to beat her, and the third time you're supposed to lock her in a room without food. And yeah, obviously the two women in the group are a bit shocked by this, and there's dozens of more Islamic laws I can think of, having been from an Islamic Republic itself, which will be ridiculous to Europeans because of just how innately stupid they are. And I don't think marginalization is a byproduct of solely socioeconomic factors. The thing that has happened in Germany or in France as well, where people are smoking and drinking and they're Muslims, that isn't a part of Islamic radicalism because that would go directly against like the basics of the religion. I think we have two separate parts that are creating the problem. I got me yapping for too long. Never mind.
No, you're fine. You're like really developing it. You can go on if you want to.
We have two main groups when it comes to, I don't like to use the term, but let's say Muslims, which cause problems in Europe. I don't know, not all of them cause problems, obviously, but there's two main subtypes that we have to take into consideration. We have the ones which come from very socioeconomically weak groups, which cause it due to lack of education and culture, which won't do it by the cause of their religion, and it's not related whatsoever. And then we have complete radicalists, which have been indoctrinated by groups of terrorists, which work mainly in countries like the UAE or Syria, which come and they will get these people, and seeing as they're already victimized and demonized by things that have happened previously, and they will take these ideas and put it in their heads that yes, if you um, if you commit a genocide in this land and you kill the infidels, as it's mainly referred to when you translate it to English, then you are guaranteed a place in heaven because that is the only way you will find salvation.
Okay, so while you were talking, something, I mean, just ran through my mind. Basically, how do you, okay, yeah, so you said that it is because of like the religion itself, right? However, why do you think that there's European Muslims who were basically born in Europe to immigrant parents who feel the need to join jihadist groups like Al Qaeda and ISIS, even though they were fully integrated into society? Because let's say they were born in France, so they're French, they've got the French nationality, French passport, they speak French. However, they do feel the need to join such terrorist organizations. I believe that may be as a result of the marginalization that they're subjected to by the French because of their cultural stereotypes and their perspective that Muslims are the ones who cause trouble. And I think that this social divide may be like the tipping point that makes them join terror organizations. Don't you think so?
I disagree with you again on this, and I get where you're coming from, and it makes sense in a European context when looking at it from the outside. It's a very good viewpoint, but I think we also have to take into consideration the psychology of it and the fact that humans by default want to be in these little groups that we put ourselves in because um, the species that we derive from isn't made to be in groups of 8 billion. And so we feel more comfortable putting ourselves in these tiny subgroups. And well, as you said, I think marginalization makes part of it in which they see themselves as unfit for any other group. But I think basic human logic would dictate that, okay, it would be better to be alone than to commit mass murders for something I barely believe in, just so I could be part of a group which says they're cool with me.
Okay, anything else to add by anyone to this specific discussion?
I
Or maybe
wanted
just
to
your opinions on whether Oh, yeah, sorry. Just your
Yeah,
opinions on whether you believe it's one or the other.
I don't really have like a split opinion, but kind of the idea of like wanting to join groups. I mean, I've heard about it many times, and I think it's very realistic. But the groups that we're talking about are very extreme. I think kind of the rest of the population, or the rest essentially, yeah, the population doesn't tend to lead towards that. I think, to want to go commit mass murder, you have to be in a very bad place mentally and not have like other options or groups to join, because it's far too extreme for something that someone who I don't even know how to phrase this, but it just seems like I struggle to see the logic behind that. I understand the willingness to join a group, but there's so many other options and so many other communities to be a part of. Like even just within like other Muslims who live nearby, but there's no need to go and commit terrorist attacks and everything that's going on.
Well, if I may, I'm just going to use a different example, another point in history to respond to this. And let's look at Europe during a more medieval time, right? People had the right to be in other religions in secrecy or even be atheists. And we could have gone against kings and lived a much better life, but everyone decided to follow Christianity for one reason, and this is the very reason which people join extremist groups, is that you are promised salvation. No other group socially ever promises you that such glory that salvation does in extremist groups. You could join, I don't know, a music group, but all you'd have are these temporary pleasures which you wouldn't really feel true to because you've been excluded your entire life. But once you're promised these beautiful paradise, if you just do this one thing which ends instantly, I think it seems much more rewarding to weak individuals, as you stated, to join these groups. And I think that's why there's a lot of Europeans, for example, which have joined ISIS in recent years, because the European lifestyle no longer promises any actual benefits. You're just supposed to slave away in a 9 to 5 for the rest of your days to hopefully, when you're 60, just retire and have a really shitty house to live in. But when you go to an ISIS recruiter, they'll promise you a land where anything you want can happen and all your deepest wishes come true. And I think that's what makes it enticing for people, not solely to kill, but that the end result is a glorious, omnipotent being which will give you anything you desire.
That like no, that makes sense, but I just think other religions tend to promise the same thing, but you don't see as much radicalism in these other religions. Like in Christianity, you said like in history, but today Christians aren't, in Europe at least, not in the same numbers, are committing these acts of terrorism. Like I don't mean to make Christians sound perfect. I'm just using it as an example that Christianity also promises heaven and salvation at the end, and you don't see the same like radicalism and extremism in Europe with Christians as you do with Muslims. So I still don't think that it's um I think the people who are part of these groups, it's like you said, they're weak individuals, and to like solve the issue, it would be like essentially impossible with that group of people because they're just so far gone like mentally essentially, and they're in such bad situations that there's not much salvation that you can promise them. They've kind of like set their mind on this, and yeah.
Well, I don't know if this could be could be a proper response to your statement, but radicalism of Christianity does exist a lot in Europe, but it's just that Christian scripture doesn't promote genocide as a manner. But for example, Catholicism is it's basically a pay to win in reality, and that's why many Europeans, how many people donate to churches just for the sake of salvation? It might not be killing, but we have many institutions in European countries which are radicalized by Christianity and will donate millions upon millions of dollars to a Catholic church, which will use it for glamorous churches or to try to fix uh, things which with problems which don't even exist. And so I think the only reason we see radicalism in Islam so prevalently is that the scripture itself promotes such an immoral act to get salvation that we see it as a problem. Albert.
Okay, I've
Yeah.
also talked with you. Oh yeah, go ahead. You can answer. Yeah, go ahead.
No, it's all right. You can move on.
I've just typed 2 points and I'm typing a third in the group chat while you were talking. Essentially, do you believe Islam is the only religion that uses force to attain its goals, whereas Christianity, Judaism, Buddhism are so-called peaceful religions? I think you touched a little on it when discussing Christianism, Christianity, and Muslim. So I just wanted to raise the point. For example, Buddhism, where in Myanmar they like monks actually led campaigns to harass and kill Muslims in Myanmar. So their portrayal of a peaceful religion may not be as accurate, and I think we may not need to demonize the Islamic religion itself because there's others that do implement force to reach their goals. Food for thought. You can answer this prompt. Yeah, Viva. Starting with you, Viva.
I'd like to just like not agree with either of the sides that are like, or I don't know, with either of the thoughts or ways of thinking that we've been talking about so far. I'd just like to bring up that I do agree with Vika in the sense that basically answering the question from before, that in Europe at least Christianity is uh has less like radicalism in sorry Christianity creates less radicalism, and I'd like to just like specifically say like that um if we focus on in the question at least that you said, it's Europe and it's also um more general. So if we were talking about America, I think that it's completely a different situation, and I do want to bring light to that at least from my little knowledge about the fact that maybe Christ radicalism uh in the sense of Christianity is in heightened numbers in the US is from what I my knowledge, and whereas in Europe it's Islamic. I'm gonna sorry, my words aren't wording. Sorry.
That was okay. I think we got your point. That in America, Christian radicalism is more prevalent than Islamic radicalism. That's what you're saying. Okay. Yeah, Mark.
Hi, yeah. First, I want to say I'm kind of sorry for joining 30 minutes late. Uh, yeah. Then I want to comment more on what the actual question you just asked and what Viva was talking about. So, first, Islamic radicalism in Europe, I think it's mostly present because certain groups influence certain immigrants who are Islamic to uh, to think that they are not being represented, so to say, and this causes them to become radicalized and act out, to put it nicely. Um, but yeah, and I'd say that that's mostly just an effect of outside groups, and I don't think that it has necessarily anything to do with it being Europe or America, because then I want to touch on the other thing she said, which is Christian radicalism in America. And I might be slightly biased because I'm Christian myself, but I don't really see Christian radicalism in America apart from insanely specific radicalist groups like the KKK, which I mean first of all basically don't exist anymore, but I don't know what you would say is Christian radicalism. or acts of terrorism rather committed by people in the name of Christianity versus acts of terrorism committed by people in the name of Islam, which I'm not blaming on the religion itself. The religion itself doesn't advocate for any of this. Uh, and that's the other thing. And then for Islamic just radicalism present in Europe in general, we can't really say that it is present because it's still very isolated cases. And just rather than radicalism, the thing that I'd say is present in Europe is the movement by Islamic people who have moved to or immigrated to Europe, trying to force their surroundings to follow their beliefs when maybe that's not exactly what they should be doing and rather should try their best to adapt to the new culture or whatever. And yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Mark. Next was Jerome. Yeah.
Hi. Yeah. First off, I also would like to apologize for being half an hour late. I'm in Dubai, so the time difference kind of confused me. So yeah, sorry about that. And yeah, okay. Moving on to the question at hand. The first thing I would like to touch on is the thing that Mark mentioned about there's no Christian radicalism in America. So for that, I would like to say that I disagree with that. I would say that in America, there's been a lot of, well, I wouldn't say radicalization, but I would say there's a lot of discussion of Christianity, or like, I don't know, I would say it's more generally more popular, to put it in a sense there, due to probably mostly like online radicalization, to put it in a way. Like I would say it's a lot more prominent. Christianity is a lot more prominent in like USA, due to like online platforms and stuff like that, and social media. I think that plays a lot of a part. Okay, I saw what you typed in the chat, and that is slightly false, but I'm gonna ignore that. Okay, so having moving forward with that, I would also like to move on to the question, which is the to what extent is the distance between European countries and Muslim countries a factor of causing Islamic radicalization? I think a key point in that is definitely has to do with migration and the displacement of certain communities from from Muslim regions towards Europe. I think that's one of the main reasons as to why there is a lot more, to say, Islamic radicalization in Europe compared to America, as of course, since geographically speaking, it's a lot easier for those in Muslim countries to go to Europe instead of going all the way to America, which is a lot further geographically speaking. Uh, in addition to that, I would also like to say that it is also a lot easier to kind of go through the borders of Europe rather than to all the way to America, because America now have a lot more. They're a lot more strict in terms of accepting certain refugees from certain nations. So I would also like to say that that's one point also to take into consideration. And yeah, okay, that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. Thank you also for touching on the third prompt, which deals with the geographic factor. Um, okay, next, Viva.
Can I go after Vika? I have to write down my response to Jerome.
Yeah, for sure. Well, if Vika is fine with that.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I definitely agree. Like geographically, it's like unarguable that the fact that Europe is so close, it's going to be a reason that like it's easier for people from Muslim countries to immigrate here rather than to the US. And again, Europe was a lot more accepting of these immigrants. And as Albert mentioned, like in general, it is partially at least the government's fault for what's happening because of the way that they taking these immigrants and like they don't properly integrate them into society. We were discussing this before Jerome and Mark, you two joined. So yeah. And then I want to touch on the point that Mark said that he doesn't think that Islam, the religion itself, advocates for the violence. And again, you missed this because you came a little bit late, but we were talking about it, and Rodvin like brought up a few really good quotes from the actual Quran, how like they do contradict themselves in like the scripture, and there is a lot of points about using violence to either make people religious or kind of get their point across. So I think like the religion itself, just the scripture and their beliefs behind it, do advocate for a lot more violence than like the Christian religion does. I can't really speak on the behalf of other religions because I don't know anything about them. Uh, but I think that definitely like the beliefs of Islam people lead to kind of these what's going on.
Viva, are you ready? If not, yeah. Okay, so Viva and later, Rodman.
Okay, so I wanted to first touch upon what Mark said. That like obviously not your fault. Well, since you guys came late, like you didn't hear the beginning of like the conversation, but no worries. Um, Basically, I was just saying that in comparison to Europe, I thought that the basically what Jerome said, that the radicalism in the U.S. is far higher than it is in Europe, even if it's low. I from what I think, which I'm gonna now touch upon, I don't think it's that low. I think sure huge movements, yes, but it's still evident in everyday society in the US. I know that because I lived there, and I lived past tense, sorry. And I like went through like, so it's a push religion for sure. It's like in school you have to say the thing that and sorry, say the anthem, and it's much more supported. You can see that through the media, through um yeah, just through the media, and it's just much more supported, which is why I was just saying, of course this isn't radicalism, but it definitely marginalizes other communities, which is just my point there, that it's like maybe it's not radicalism, you're right on that, but I'm saying like it's because what Vika said, that the scriptures, like the beliefs aren't as quote unquote radical, and I think therefore it's not radicalism per se, but it is definitely marginalizing other communities, which is kind of looping back to the first question we got, which I don't think you guys were here for either, but no worries. And then what Jerome said, the strict on letting certain people in, like definitely that is definitely correct, but like in certain like the last couple of years at least, there's like graphs on how they've been letting more like migrants in that practice is like Islam. So yes, you're right, but in recent years it's been growing. So yeah.
Okay, next. Wait a second. Rodman, yeah.
Okay. Well, first of all, I gotta say thank you, Mark. That was beautifully said, and I agree with everything you said up until now. But I'd like to firstly disagree with Viva's point of view that I don't I don't believe that Christianity being prevalent in a Christian country by default is marginalization, because that's like saying if people in Spain speak Spanish, then we're being racist towards other countries because we're not adding their language and we're forcing it upon them. A part of a nation is its state religion, unless it's secular, obviously, which I would hand to you. But the U.S. itself has always been a Christian country built on Christian values, and I don't think people which are immigrating to that country are marginalized by the fact that a state belief exists. If anything, globalization should bring acceptance that each country has the right to believe in something. And I'd like to answer one of the questions Albert put, because it was a bit interesting to me, was about if Islam is the only religion which uses violence to attain its goals. And I'd like to say that out of the two that they put as examples, Judaism, Buddhism, namely, well, Judaism, they don't really have a good history when it comes to ever being in power. So they never had the opportunity to use violence to ever force their ideology on someone else, seeing as they were enslaved for since their existence. So I just leave them be. But many religions, Buddhism and Taoism and Confucianism in the Oriental Asia, specifically state that every human life is sacred. But Islam does quite the opposite. It states that if you are an infidel, you are no longer a complete human. You are lesser than a Muslim, because you are so simple that you cannot accept the salvation of Allah upon you, and you need to be forced to do so. That's why we see such prevalent radicalism, because the scripture allows hate so easily.
Okay, that's a pretty good point. Thanks, Rodman. Now, Mark.
Yes, good job, Rodvin. I agree with pretty much everything you said. Um, yeah, that's it. That's good. And then I wanted to also touch on what Viva said earlier, but I mean, Rodvin pretty much said what I was gonna say, which is that um, how is Christianity supposedly being supported? Because I'm gonna touch on that as well in the U.S. a thing that is bad or the thing that is radicalizing, because just because a faith is supported by the central government of a nation doesn't promote inherently radicalization in any way. Or unless you're, I mean, radicalization is different from like spreading the religion. Radicalization is um, literally radicalizing the religion. Well, I mean, I'm sure you know what that means, Viva. Um, but yeah, basically, that's one of the things I wanted to say. Rodman basically said it. And then the other thing that I wanted to touch on, Viva, is the fact that Christianity, despite the anthem, despite everything, I would not say at all that right now in the US it's being like publicly supported by the government or whatever. During President Biden's, may God have mercy on his soul, while he was giving his Thanksgiving speech, he literally left out the part where they thanked God. Literally, that every president has done for the history of the US. He left that part out specifically to not mention God. And apart from that, Joe Biden, who has claimed that he's a devout Catholic many times, has done so many things that are not in favor of Christianity that is fine, it's fine. But then I just don't think, Viva, you can claim that that government supports Christianity in any way. And that's the other thing that I wanted to mention. So that's just another way that it's not radicalizing. As for the geographical factor with the U.S., not having Islamic radicalism, I'd say it's not just the fact that the U.S. doesn't have, or rather that the U.S. doesn't have direct contact with Islamic nations geographically, but it's also the fact that in the U.S. Um, there's just less reason for, um, or less reason for them to see themselves as like to justify themselves being radical, I'd say, because really there's nothing holding them back, except now essentially they actually are seeing themselves as marginalized, as you said, Viva, because the society around them maybe doesn't follow their values. And I'm also sorry if I missed anything again, because after I talked, Vika did bring up some things that I missed that might have made my words out of context or whatever. So yeah, I'm sorry if I did miss anything during the first half an hour. And uh, I wanted to say something finally, but I already forgot what it was. So Viva, you can go next.
Um, okay, so now I'm realizing, like, now that I'm like hearing your responses, that I did mess up my words and I did not mean to like um I'm sorry. I was just trying to like say that like I think I just messed up the wording. I'm really sorry about that. I just was just trying to bring a point that like at least yeah, Rodman's right that it is a like it is a Christian country. I know that. I'm just saying like that at least like through the media, at least in schools and stuff, like that's how it can be perceived as. But I messed up the words. I wasn't trying to say like marginalized. I think I just didn't know the word for it, and I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks. And Jerome now.
Uh, yeah, first off, I would like to disagree with Mark by saying that I think that radicalization of something does lead to the spreading of that sort of information. And there have been many historical examples of that happening. The Protestant Reformation of the 16th century, the French Revolution of the late 18th century, the Bolshevik Revolution of the 1917, Civil Rights Movement of mid 20th century. All of these are examples of how radicalization have led to the spreading of something. So by saying that radicalization of Christianity or Islamic radicalization, for example, doesn't lead to the spreading of that, I severely disagree with that. The second thing I'd like to point out is that, of course, President Biden is not going to say anything about Christianity during his speeches, obviously, because he wants to remain neutral for the sake of the US government, as he is a figurehead of the US government. So by showing that he is leaning towards some sort of bias towards a certain type of religion, obviously he's not going to do that to, try for the sake at least of being the president, remain neutral and not, try to bring politics, no, try not to bring religion into politics. So yeah, and also you literally said it yourself, Joe Biden is Christian, and almost all US presidents for that matter have been Christian. Actually, Congress, including like 9 and 10 representatives, is 88% Christian. So yeah, yeah, that's what I'm gonna say.
Okay, Mark, you got the floor.
Wow, Jerome, some just incredible points you made there. Wonderful. Can I just like start by saying that your whole thing with the radicalization not leading to the spread of something, that's not even what I said. I said that it's not that rather spreading something doesn't equal radicalization, not that radicalization doesn't equal spreading something. And then you brought up the Bolshevik Revolution, which I'm sorry, where did that even come from? Like, what are you talking about? So I'm just sorry, that what are you on about? And then and then Thanksgiving, or rather Biden's speech where you said he's trying to remain, what did you say, neutral or secular? Um, man, the speech was on Thanksgiving. Do you know the definition of the holiday of Thanksgiving? To give thanks to God for everything that's happened over the year. That's like their whole definition for the holiday. And that's why every president in the history of the United States has always thanked God in their speech. So it's fine if he wants to remain neutral. It's just weird way that he makes a point with it and then says he's Christian. He remains neutral in every other speech. That's completely fine. But your point on that also doesn't make sense. I'm sorry, Jerome. Um, and well, what else? Oh yeah, I remember the other thing that I was going to say the other time, which is what Rodman brought up about the scriptures. Which I mean, despite the fact that I wasn't here for the first 30 minutes, I'm aware of that, and it's just one of the reasons that I mean that I'm not Muslim. But the thing is, they just believe in an unforgiving God rather than one who is actually peaceful. So I think that's just one of the main flaws with the religion in general. But I wouldn't say that even those quotes that say that violence is okay in certain contexts advocate in any way for the Muslim radicalism. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah,
Okay,
go ahead, Jerome.
Rodman, do you want to? Thanks, Mark. Rodman, do you want to answer it before? No.
Oh, wait, sorry. I mean, no, okay, thank you, Rodvin. Okay, Mark. First thing you did, no, that is not true. You legit, first thing you legit said that radicalization and the spreading of something aren't synonymous. And then you said that. What did I say about Bolshevik Revolution? That was just an example of how radicalization of something led to the spreading of something. It was just an example. So you're probably just confused on that point. And then the second thing of what do you mean am I confused? Okay, I'm not gonna comment on that, Vika. Anyways, but no, that was just an example of how radicalization of something led to something else. And then the second thing of the Thanksgiving thing, wasn't Thanksgiving just to express gratitude of harvest, like from the pilgrims and stuff? What does that have to do with
Jerome,
Christianity?
search
I
up the
might be
meaning of
confused on that though.
Thanksgiving.
What?
Do you mind just searching up the meaning of Thanksgiving?
I did. It says it traces to origins of harvest festivals. What does that have to do with
Jerome, the
Christianity?
literal definition of Thanksgiving, the expression of gratitude, especially to God. In
That's
North
not what it
America,
says.
the annual national holiday and a traditional meal. The holiday commemorates a harvest festival celebrated by the pilgrims and is celebrated in honor of giving thanks to God for everything it's given to you over the years. He's given to you over the years. That's
Yeah.
the definition, Jerome.
I see the giver. I don't know. Maybe it's a different source. It probably is. Anyways, I don't really care about that. That's a small. It has very little to
Sure,
do with the
Jerome.
topic in general. Wow, using a sadistic tone. I see, Marcus. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. Okay, yeah, I'm done.
You meant sarcastic, not sadistic. I'm just saying.
Potato,
Okay.
potato.
Okay, nice little debate there. I think I even lost the point that y'all were trying to make with regard to Thanksgiving, but it's okay. It was really entertaining. Uh, just before ending, I think there were like two different problems that I wanted to go through. Firstly, there was one. Oh yeah, I really briefly want to talk about Samuel Paty and his murder, and just get your opinion on this specific thing. So I'm just going to read. Basically, Samuel Paty was a middle school history teacher in France who was tragically murdered in October 2020. He showed caricatures of the Islamic prophet Muhammad during a lesson in free speech and was subsequently targeted by an 18-year-old Chechen refugee. The attacker, who was angered by the display of these cartoons, beheaded Paty outside the school. The incident sparked widespread condemnation, discussions on freedom of speech, and efforts to combat extremism in France and around the world. Um, so yeah, this was what happened, and this was a really strong blow to the French Republic. And afterwards, President Emmanuel Macron publicly condemned, um, you know, this happening and Islamist radicalism in France, and he imposed tighter restrictions on um, the portrayal of Islam in France, and basically he enforced secularism. So the question, I think the prompt is already in the chat. It's basically, to what extent are European governments allowed to create caricatures of Prophet Muhammad to and use them in freedom of speech lessons in high and middle school. Um, to what extent can they do this, and also just be downright ignorant towards the Muslim religion and just directly contradict it or try to um, make Muslims heard by showing things that they may otherwise not need to show, and just like show them the belief of freedom of speech in different ways. Yeah, so please talk a little about this and answer this prompt. Rodman, you were first on the list.
Okay. I'd first of all like to take this opportunity to insult Macron because it's a free one. And he's an extreme hypocrite because he recently celebrated Hanukkah in a public building, which is against French secular laws. And for all the people who would like to say that Europe is marginalizing them, this is a point you can use. I'm giving a freebie out there. But I'd like to say that if someone wants to immigrate to European soil, they kind of got to accept that human rights are a thing, and a part of it is freedom of speech. And you can have your own religion. A caricature isn't going to say that you should not believe it, but it is solely comedic relief of someone else's belief. And there is no reason to commit murder for such a simple drawing. And countries should clearly be allowed to do so because we have human rights regarding the freedom of speech, but there's no part of the UN Constitution, the UN guidelines, which states, "Thou shalt not make fun of a prophet because it might hurt someone's feelings." Because that's just nonsense. If we go through that route our entire lives, then we're always going to bum someone out with the way we talk, and then we just lose any form of actual free speech and just have mandated guidelines. It would just be a dictatorship, but subliminal.
Okay, thanks, Rodman. However, just another question. Um, do you believe there is a don't you believe that maybe it is better to use other kind of content or other measures to represent the ideal of freedom of speech instead of deliberately using content that is offensive towards a large portion of your population or a significant minority in your country? Don't you
Well,
believe it's just easier for them to talk about something different?
well, the point of using the caricature is to state that freedom of speech can damage your emotions, but it's still maintained. If we don't use that, then you don't show a main portion of freedom of speech. Obviously, there are more emotionally preserving ways to show freedom of speech, but I think the point of the class is that speech is emotion provoking. We're humans. We all feel things when people speak, but I don't think you should stop saying the word apple if that goes against my personal beliefs and that I should have a hissy fit and stab you because my religion says that apples should not be made fun of. We have the whole point of freedom of speech is that people's emotions are provoked, but we can have a civil discourse and maintain a bit of humanity when we do so.
Okay, thank you, Rodman. Anyone else who wants to? Yeah, Viva.
I have a really important question. Can I take a cast picture? Thank
Can
you.
I do the same?
Yeah, everyone can do the same. Yeah.
Okay, ready? Drew and Mark, do you want to turn your cameras on for this or no?
I already got a camera at the moment.
Yeah, I can't at this current moment in time either.
All right, so do I get to talk now?
Unless Viva has anything else to add to her.
I have
Yeah.
a genuine question. Not like genuine question. Like not anything related to the topic. Rodman, where are you from? I'm really confused. Cause there's a
Okay,
Isn't that an
flag in
Indian
the
flag
back.
in your background?
Yeah.
that's the Iranian Empire.
Is
Okay, there's the lion as well. I could show it if you'd like, right?
Yes, show it.
Yeah, okay. I'll show it for the sake of comedic value. Well,
Wait, so are you from Iran or just
yeah,
randomly have an Iranian flag?
I'm from Iran. You see, there's a massive. My alarm is the Iranian Empire national anthem, so I wake up in the most patriotic way possible. You know,
I should make my alarm the Russian anthem then, shouldn't I? Better yet, the Soviet anthem.
And that,
Союз нерушимый республик. Anyways,
Mark,
and
that
for
was
this,
not an
oh,
invitation to sing the anthem.
really was, Jerome.
Okay, you know what? Let me
Anyways,
just sing the
now,
Chinese anthem.
Jerome, come on, please, silence. Now, might I comment on the actual topic? Right. So, the question that we had before on the, well, I don't really know how to describe it. I guess the situation with the 18-year-old Chechen refugee who murdered his teacher. Um, yeah, the point that Albert brought up about like using a caricature that you know is offensive or whatever. I mean, Rodvin basically answered it, but I mean, just to like answer it even more, why should we be afraid to use just like a caricature, just something that's made to be comedic, not made to be offensive? Well, I mean, it's like, why should we be afraid to show that in classrooms just because it might offend some people? I mean, that's just crazy. Especially in like, they should just get used to the idea of free speech, like Rodman said, if they're going to be here, or freedom of expression, and that applies to everyone. If you want to criticize, if you want to use a caricature of any religion or anything, or make fun of it, that's fine to a certain extent. In this case, in this context, it was definitely fine and definitely does not justify in any way any of the actions taken by the refugee. Well, okay, I don't know why I'm referring to him as a refugee, by the Chechen kid, because I don't know. Yeah, and well, that's pretty much it, and that just kind of shows that that would just never happen. Just for Viva again, that would just never happen if they used a caricature of like, I don't know, Jesus or something. Not even in the most conservative part of Armenia, that would never happen. Armenia I used as an example because they're probably the most um, openly Christian country.
Okay, just before Rodvin gets to speak, I think you were talking a lot about like content that was offensive. Evidently, it is a clear topic inside this major topic. A further extension on this whole topic could be the fact the current battle that certain Ivy League institutions are facing with regard to freedom of speech as a result of the Israel and Palestine conflict. And I don't know whether you know much about it, but where the barriers are drawn, like where the limits are drawn with respect to freedom of speech and content, or basically just saying stuff that is like calling them for the massacre of Jews, for example. That is clearly maybe not an adequate representation of freedom of speech. So it is really important to like talk about the limits that people put to freedom of speech. Just some food for thought. Now, Rodman, yeah.
okay. Well, first of all, I gotta thank my main man Mark again for supporting my point, and I'd like to state that I'd like to give an example of how Christianity doesn't have the same issues as Muslim does, because I mean, characters like Jesus have been used for comedic relief for decades now, and you haven't seen anyone get stabbed in Fox Studios because Jesus was in Family Guy, right? And I'd like to respond to what Albert said by mentioning a part of the UN guidelines itself, and it's that you are not in the UN guidelines. I think it's Article 13. I don't really remember because I used like 2 years ago, but whatever. It specifically states that you are all of these. Jesus Christ, how do you say it? So all human rights must be preserved, and you cannot preserve one by breaking another. Which is where the whole "you can't say kill all Jews" comes into play, because then that's hate speech, which is a violation of another human right. So it doesn't work in freedom of speech anymore because you're deliberately hating a group. But in the case of the US specifically, and many US institutions, it's a much more, it gives the benefit of doubt. What the fuck? It much more gives the benefit of doubt to minorities, and there's a lot of white resentment and heterosexual resentment in the US without any backlash whatsoever, because since they're oppressed groups, hate speech is more allowed. And I think this is one other reason why Christians in many countries resent Islamic immigrants because they're allowed to say whatever they please whenever they please.
Okay, thank you, Rodman and Mark.
Yeah, well, I mean, Rodden kind of keeps saying what I'm about to say before I say it, so I don't really have anything to add. It's kind of annoying, honestly, but it's okay. As long as he agrees with me, that's good. But yeah, that's it.
Okay, so just to kind of like wrap it up, I believe the topic on Sunday's debate, where it's going to be both the people who are in the European version and in the Americas version, is going to be about, well, it will be revolving around the question, should Europe decrease immigration from Muslim countries as a whole? So that will probably be the topic of debate, unless you have more innovative or creative inputs with regard to Islamist radicalism. You can always send them through the group chat. Okay, maybe if y'all can, like every single one of you can just give a closing statement, like one sentence on your opinion on the matter, and maybe like a possible solution, and we wrap it up after that. Starting with Viva. No?
Is this gonna go on the Instagram?
Yeah, most likely. Why? Okay.
I need to actually
Uh,
think of what I'm gonna say because if it's going on the Instagram, I have to sound.
Albert, and who makes the Instagram posts? Like, who can I?
well, yeah, so Lucy manages the videos. She's here without her camera. You can probably see her. Also for the editing team, we're gonna give you updates soon to like start getting it going. So yeah. Okay, closing remarks. Let's just start. Let's just go in order of like how I see on the screen. So Kevin, you're the first one.
I need to process my thoughts over.
Okay. Who is ready to give their closing remark?
I guess I'll go.
Go ahead.
So I just got to say like my conclusion. Islamic radicalism is the byproduct of a faulty religion. No, never mind. Nah, if I say that, I'm not getting into any colleges until the day I die. Hell no.
We'll make sure Lucy edits that part out. Don't worry.
No, I'll say
God,
something.
that was great. Come on, man. Stay with that. Stay with that. That was
No,
great.
man. I need to get into university. I need to feed my family, man. You know, I can't be out in the streets like this. I'll just say, you know, it, peace and love to all Muslims. I love all of you.
Oh God. Okay. Thanks for that closing remark, Stephen. Anyone next? Mark, Jerome, you seem both to be really active. I think you can definitely come with closing remarks.
I think Jerome should go first.
Sure, Mark, I'll go first. To wrap up, Viva, you're wrong. And yeah, I think Islamic radicalism is mostly due to the geographical location. I think that plays a huge role. And yeah, that's all I really have to say. And yeah, Viva, you're wrong. Sorry, I had to, Mark told me to say it.
Okay, now Mark.
Is that gonna go on the school Instagram on the Instagram saying I'm wrong?
Mark told me to say it. Don't blame me.
That's hate.
What do you mean I told you to? What are you talking about?
Please remain calm because
Act in denial, Mark.
on Instagram.
When did I tell you? Okay,
Here,
okay,
wait,
sure, Jerome.
Albert, for the sake
Jerome,
of the
remain
school, I'll make
professional
a
for the
more
Instagram.
professional closing
Jerome,
statement.
Jerome,
Wait,
silence.
Mark, wait. No, you silence. Albert, for the sake of the school, I'll do a more, presentable closing statement.
Because just so you know, okay, I give your closing statement. I'll just tell you something.
Yeah, I believe that it is due to the geographical locations that Islamic radicalization in Europe is more prone than in the USA.
Thank you. Because just so you know, although on Instagram we have excerpts of a session, so people can edit out parts where you don't feel confident or whatever. Um, the whole videos are uploaded to YouTube in the end. So
That's
they
fine.
haven't
It's
yet
fine.
been.
I didn't record what I said. It's
Oh
cool.
hell no! I gotta change my name and shit. Fuck. I
We'll,
wasn't told all that.
we'll make sure that part is edited and it looks like like the video flows. Don't worry. We'll be
I stand by
managing.
what I said.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay, Mark.
concur.
Hey, Mark, please your concluding remark.
My concluding remark is that in this case, I want to say, in both the case of Europe and America, those who feel oppressed are really the oppressor, and those who people think are the oppressor are really the oppressed. Oof, beautiful.
I think you would all get canceled on Twitter, honestly. Um, well,
Especially
whoever-
Viva.
yeah, especially yeah. Uh, Vico, would you like to go next?
It has been a pleasure being here today. Thank you, everybody.
Okay,
Are we
thanks.
gonna
That
let
was
that fly?
probably the best closing statement so far. Um, Viva, yeah, you go ahead.
Just wait. Can I ask? Oh fuck, never mind.
Now you're definitely getting canceled. Like, okay, go Viva.
No, he can go first.
Who? Rodman? Didn't you already conclude?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask a question, but I can ask it after. Doesn't matter.
Okay, no. Yeah. Okay, so who is concluding? Like, Kevin, you go. Can someone just conclude, bro? Okay, Kevin,
Oh, I don't
Viva,
know, Albert. Like everyone's turning on the what's the, I don't know how to state my closing statement right now.
just your opinion in like a sentence.
Dude, if I go to canceling every platform for my opinion, I won't do this.
You're not. No one is gonna get canceled. Y'all probably don't even have Twitter, so like, chill. I mean X. Um, whatever. Okay. Okay. No closing remarks from Kevin, Viva, and Rodman. Did you want to answer a question or something?
I wanted to ask something. I want
Okay.
to ask people's ages because I think I'm the youngest here.
Rodvin, there's no way you look like you could actually have 7 kids.
Bro, what do you mean
Like,
he could? He does have 7 kids. Their names are Philip, the
wait, no,
first.
wait, Rodvin, how old are you? There's no way.
I'm 16. I'm younger than all of you.
There's no way.
There's
I'm
no
also
way you're
16, but there's
16.
just no way.
There's no way.
What month is your birthday?
May 22nd.
Oh my God, you're
Okay.
younger than me. There's no way.
He's older than me. We're good.
You're older than
Okay.
all of us except Mark and the 2-year 12s.
Yeah.
Well-
So you're not the youngest, Rodman. No, not today.
I'm the youngest.
Damn.
I think it was notable even without knowing the ages of people.
Well, no, Rodvin seemed to think that she was older than him.
Really? Oh yeah, I mean yeah, because Robin, I don't know. I mean I am surprised he's 16. He kind of looks like 27.
Yeah, man. I thought he was. I thought you had to be at least 20, man. And then you started talking. You got to go to college. Pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, also, I was told you were in a uni.
Nah, bro.
By whom? Who said that? Albert, you spreading fake information now.
I did not say anything. I literally.
You just said that?
I don't. Yeah. I don't spread rumors. No.
Wait, what, Vika? You told me he was a professor at a college. What?
I was gonna say something, but I kind of forgot. So, yeah, I think we're gonna call this a day. Thank you so much for joining. It was really interesting hearing your different remarks. Just to like know how many of you are gonna join on Sunday to debate against the people in the Americas and make
I
your
don't know what
your
time is
talk.
it on Sunday in Barcelona time.
Same time, 7:30 to 8:30. I think.
Okay, then I probably will join then.
Okay, cool. Let's be those American people.
I'll try to
Um,
join if Jerome joins.
Would we be all one team against the Americans?
Usually no. Usually it's like based on your belief. So like the question to be answered is that of immigration from Muslim countries, whether Europe should increase it, make it remain the same, or like decrease it significantly. Um, so yeah, it's probably going to be based on your opinions on that.
Yeah, but we'll probably have completely different opinions. So probably that's just a yes.
Yeah, probably you're just going to interweave with the others. Okay, so thank you so much for joining, and see you Sunday in that case. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
you.